Just be yourself. All right. Okay. Sounds good. We've all heard this, right? When we're nervous for a job interview or for a presentation, or we're about to go on stage and people cheer us up with this, yo, just be yourself. If you're just yourself, everything's gonna be fine. And that's a really beautiful message, right? Because it essentially means that, hey, if you're just yourself, you're more than good enough, and you'll get the job, you'll get everything you want, people will love you, and you'll get the bag. Just create authentic content. And when you create authentic content, you will attract a lot of followers. Marketing, if you just market authentically, which means if you're just you, your products will sell. We hear it everywhere. And while, yes, sounds about right, the question for a lot of us is, how am I myself? What does that even mean to be myself? Because when we learn as little mini me versions that the self isn't safe, it's very hard to access the self later on. This is where our trauma plays a big role. Let's say we're 3 years old and everything in our environment is telling us that the self isn't safe. It is not safe to be ourself. Whether that's true or that's just the conclusion that we come to as a child because we don't have all the information at hand, because a lot of times trauma isn't that complicated. It's not that big of a deal. A lot of times trauma is a personality or a neural pathway that is established due to false information at that time. So it doesn't have to be this very dramatic situation that occurs. It only takes a subtle moment in time that the inner child misunderstood and therefore formed a whole new personality. Let's say something happens that tells us me being truly myself isn't safe. Let's say you're joking around and you're being scolded in the kindergarten or in preschool, or you're being super hyper and your grandma tells you to sit the fuck still, right? These can be little moments that show you, hey, being myself isn't safe. Of course, things can be much more traumatic than this. Maybe your parents abuse you, or maybe your father is very aggressive and every time he comes home for work, you better sit still, or if not, he's gonna yell at you. Or maybe if he's an alcoholic or someone around as an addict, you learn how to people please or please around their distortions. So there are many, many things that can happen in our very early development stage that show us that it's not safe to be our authentic self. And what happens is we create swords, shields, and masks to protect the self. Now, we don't actually have physical swords, we don't actually have physical shields, so we develop energetic shields, and that is called a personality. So a lot of times when we form personalities, they are here to protect the self. To protect the self from a perceived harmful environment, to protect the self from feeling, from being heard. And what they do is they can create this layer or this wall between the outer world and our feeling dimension. This is why a lot of us have a hard time feeling. This is why for a lot of us, we have a hard time tapping into our heart, because we've created personality to prevent exactly that. And the personalities that were once created to protect us over time become our prison. Because what protected us in survival is now shielding us from thrival, if that is even a word. The very thing that once helped us to survive is what prevents you to thrive. The personalities once created to protect us are now in between us and true abundance. Because personalities can force money. Personalities can force relationships and can form friendships. But it's all going to act out in a very superficial dimension. Only your eternal essence, only your true, authentic self can create wealth, can create deep, meaningful bonds, can create a life that you came here for, where you're actually living. Because when we're in our personality, it's almost like we're acting. And now, there's nothing wrong with personalities. Let's get this straight. These personalities might be some of your very favorite parts. Maybe the personality that you've created that is super witty and always has a comeback was the same personality that protected you from being bullied, or was the same personality that was so charismatic and opened many doors for you. Maybe this personality that was able to shut off your feelings and just hustle was the one that allowed you to survive. And that makes sense. So we thank these personalities, because without them, you wouldn't be here. But these personalities that were created are now the same personalities that strike the fear of God in you when it's about to get intimate with your partner, or you're with your children, but you can't stop thinking about work. Because when these personalities created in survival are now being brought into the new dimension of life, where you realize, hey, it's safe to be in my heart, they come in and they're like, hey, this is new to us. Because in survival, the dimension of your heart doesn't exist. When you're in survival, the only thing that matters is keep the vessel alive. There's no space for the deep dimensions of your heart. There's no space for actually experiencing life. Everything feels like an act, and feelings that are coming in are almost harmful to you because you're so in survival. Your personalities are here to give God a face. Your personalities are here to spice things up a little bit, make it more fun. They're kind of like ornaments, right? They just make things more prettier. They give God a certain je ne sais quoi. You know what I mean? They make things a little more caliente. They're great when you're aware of them. It gets dangerous if we're not aware of all of our personalities, because our personalities have the power to create their own phantom intelligence. So let's say you've created this one personality when you were 3 years old because you went into the kindergarten and it wasn't safe, and so you tried to have a really cool demeanor to protect yourself. And then another personality was created when you were 5 years old because your loving mom all of a sudden was super stressed out and turned into a person that you couldn't even recognize. And to not have your heart be broken, you created this personality that doesn't give a shit. Right? And so on and so on. And let's say over the course of your childhood and your life, you've created 50 personalities that all have their own superpower. And once they're triggered, they take over the vessel to protect the vessel. Now, when you're not aware of that, it's almost like 50 different personalities are running your vessel, and they run on autopilot. The moment a certain frequency hit, they're triggered, they possess your vessel, and now they take over, right? When it's time to be in go-getter mode, they take over. When it's time to be in front of people, another personality takes over. And this kind of makes us a biological robot. So now do you see, when life tells you, hey, just be yourself, things get a little complicated? Because you've created all of these fragmented parts of yourself. And yeah, some of them have a little essence of you in them, but some of them are also totally divorced from your true essence. And this is what makes the journey to yourself very, very interesting. So I try not to say shit like, oh, just be yourself. because this can be quite hard. But when I work with people and I can feel the spark, when I can feel their true light, I'm like, this, more of that. Can you feel that in your body? How does that feel? Because your true self is your heart dimension. And so your true self is always your most self-compassionate version. It's the version of you that is untouched. It's the version of you that has been broken down and yet is never broken. It's the version of you that is in touch with your inner child innocence. It's the version of you that loves yourself wholeheartedly. It's the version of you that doesn't give an F what other people think because it knows who you are. And so as you get deeper into your heart, it'll be easier for you to extract what the self is, to get to know, how do I even feel? And that's a journey, because a lot of these personalities that were created by you were here to protect your heart. How do I access my real self, the eternal self, which has its seat in your heart? And start simple. Start with asking yourself, is my heart open right now? And that sounds really intangible, but it's actually a thing. And maybe you're not used to the subtle awareness yet, and maybe you're not used to the energetic dimension of your body, but it's a real thing. You can feel your heart, and it might take you a little bit of time, depending on how you grew up, depending on what you had to go through, right? Because we try to protect the heart. All the personalities were created to protect the heart, essentially. So thank all of them. They all had good intentions. But when you tune into your chest, can you feel it? When your heart is open, meaning when you live in the dimension of your heart, it literally feels like something is pouring in from the back and you're pouring out through the front, kind of like a toroidal field. And you can actually feel it when you're still. And a lot of times when I have sessions with my women, we always start with that one question. How does your body feel? How's your heart doing? And a lot of times, I would say 95%, when we actually feel into it, we're like, oh shit, wait, I can feel a tightness in my chest. I can feel like I'm holding my breath. My heart feels tight. And that's real. If you've ever went through heartbreak, like it literally feels like your physical heart is being squeezed and it hurts. So that's real. And so when we're in these sessions and they're like, my heart is tight, we can't force the heart to open, but we can ask the heart, well, what's up here? How are you doing? Because in every tightness, there's a treasure to be found. And again, if someone just says, oh, just open your heart, it doesn't work like that. But you can be inquisitive. Or if people tell you, oh, just live from your heart, live authentically, because that's what it means, essentially. Live authentically means live from your heart. But that shit isn't that easy if your whole life you lived from 50 different personalities that were all here to protect your heart. What I'm asking you is, invite your heart back into the round table. Invite your heart back as the consigliere. Your heart doesn't have to be the mob boss, doesn't have to be the one on the throne, but can you invite it back as the assistant voice? Can you just listen what your heart would have to say? You don't have to take its route, you don't have to take its advice. Simply invite it back in. Can you learn the language of your heart again? When you make a decision, or you're in a conversation with someone, or you're with your partner, when you create, can you feel, hey, is my heart with me? or is it completely shut off? And when it's tight, there's usually something that your heart wants to communicate with you. There's usually a big breakthrough dormant. I picture it as, okay, when my heart is tight, there's a door that's closed. But behind that door is a part of me that hasn't been touched in a long while. And once I open this door, that part will communicate with me. That part will invite more capacity to feel into my life. And here's the thing with authenticity. Unless you've touched your deepest pain, authenticity is kind of out of reach. Because to be really authentic, it means you have to face your deepest pain. You have to face your greatest darkness. You have to face the shit that you try to hide all of your life because you thought that would make you unlovable, right? Because all these personalities were created to protect the heart, but also to protect yourself, because you thought that the real you isn't enough. So if the whole life you think the real you isn't enough and now everyone's telling you to just be authentic, yeah, all right. You first have to meet the real you, which means that's you in totality. All of the darkness, everything, all of the shadows, that's what shadow work is. And once you invite that and you see it and you're like, oof, and I still love you, woman. I see all of your games. I see all of your manipulation. I see all of your ugliness, and I still love you. I'll make love to all of these parts. Once that happened, once you've sat with the greatest pain, the greatest darkness, only then have you created the soil for authenticity. So if someone is really authentic, I can promise you, they've sat with their demons. They've met themselves in the ugliest versions and ugliest parts of life, and they still managed to truly love themselves. And that's why they can show up so comfortably. They don't take anything personal, right? They've seen it all. So if someone makes a shitty comment, they're like, yeah, I can see why you would think that about me. And if someone makes a compliment, they're like, thank you. Okay, I can see that. I'm pretty dope. But nothing is too personal. Their ego won't get flared up because of a compliment. They're not seeking validation in compliments. And they're also not going to be upset if someone is saying a shitty thing. They're like, yeah, it's impersonal in nature. I'm cool with whoever I am, right? I'm cool with my darkness. I'm cool with my light. And that's authenticity. And that's where the gold is. And it's beautiful to me that the word authenticity actually holds the word gold in it. So if we could simplify what authenticity is, it's home. That's why we love authentic people, because when we watch them, when we're in their presence, we feel like home. Our nervous system relaxes. When we watch someone that's authentically themselves, our whole nervous system is like, ooh, I get to chill. Everything is welcome here. Take my masks off. Take my shield off. Here, take my sword. That's home right here. That's why authenticity is gold. There's no greater gift than you can give yourself and humanity than to be authentically you, which means be in a home frequency, be in your heart, because that allows everyone else to feel at home. That allows everyone else to take off their mask. At the same time, there's no point of judging anyone who's inauthentic, because someone who shows up fake, meaning they're not in their voice, they're acting, they're tight all over, it simply means that they don't feel safe. So instead of being disgusted by it, we can identify it and see, oh, wait, we don't have to insult people with being, oh, you're so fucking fake. Well, no, see that this person is freaking scared to be themselves, because their whole life they were made to believe that they are not enough for who they are, or they had to protect the self when they were a child. They had to adapt personalities and had to play a role. So if someone fake triggers the fuck out of you, they probably trigger the versions of your fakeness. So anytime you feel that, and I definitely had that in the past, like fakeness would really trigger the F out of me. But because I was still protecting, I still had ways where I'm like, oh, I can't show up as the real me. Like when I first started to record my YouTube videos, I literally glitched. Like I was so obsessed with, oh my God, how does my face look? What about that wrinkle? Or my face is asymmetrical. And I would literally glitch. Like my face would do this like weird, whatever, like spasm, because I was so afraid to be seen. Now over time, I'm like, hey, baby girl, that's a little ridiculous. We don't have to do that. But it took a little time, and it took me loving myself even more and not taking shit personal, and also seeing where was I judging other people. So to sum it all up and make it simple, to be authentically you, you have to recognize and experience what it means to be in your heart again, and how that dimension of your heart feels. Then it's also very helpful to take on the observer seat and just see how many different personalities are you running. And if you want to dive deeper into this, there will be a Phantom Consciousness and Parts Masterclass, where we will get even deeper into the exploration of what parts are, what phantom intelligence and phantom consciousness is, what happens when we fractal into all of these different personalities, and it's completely free. Sponsored by our Rebirth container. So deeply thank the beautiful women, the oracles that are currently in my 9-month Rebirth container, because they are making this possible. And our current heart module, our Anahata module, is what inspired this whole conversation and the free masterclass. So a big shout out to my women in there. I love you, and I see you soon. Support your girl and like and subscribe. And if you're looking to deep dive one-on-one with me, I have my beautiful 1-month mentorship linked down below. So check this out and let's evolve together.